Hey, Jordan. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this proposal. So, what follows is a vision, perhaps even a new paradigm of how knowledge organization and learning can be radically improved over what exists today. If you'd like to talk more about this after, I would be most grateful. It seems to me that what we have here are many potential patents that could be filed. I mean, if Amazon can get a patent on the one-click thing, it seems to me that we could get patents on this, and I think that's probably prudent to make sure that it can't be co-opted. And of course, if you could help me with this, I would happily split the patent rights equally with you. So in this summary, I'll try to cover all the main highlights of the project. Our working title at the time was called Grocket, as in G-R-O-K-IT, or maybe G-Rocket, the G in the word rocket. So what is Grocket? Grocket is a flow architecture for maximizing people's ability to learn new things quickly and easily. Grocket is a 10x improvement, I would say at least, over the traditional educational paradigm, including sites like Wikipedia and the Khan Academy, by offering a far more comprehensive, multimedia and multimodal educational resource, unified and synergized under a single platform, completely modular, granular, and customized for each person based on things like preferred learning style, format, reading level, and you name it. Grocket would be a next generation platform combining the best in collective intelligence to the degree we can instantiate that with novel breakthroughs in UI and UX, hoping to provide a superior learning experience for all people of all ages and learning styles. And lastly, Grocket is an adaptive learning engine that increasingly optimizes users' ability to learn new things quickly and easily by using big data and deep learning. Using the latest tools in software design, user interfaces, and user psychology, and scalable, decentralized database systems, we have the capability today of creating a fully open source knowledge landscape that completely replaces or circumvents our entire dysfunctional educational system. Briefly, it would require the creation of a structured database architecture that can scale in both size and dimensionality. So if you look at it like a linear algebra, or you look at that, the idea with the big databases, it would be many, many dimensions. And I spent quite a bit of time talking to a variety of people in database and big data, for example, Peter Wang, and it's pretty much trivial to create an n-dimensional database, so a database that's you can and scalable. So for example, if you had a 10-dimensional array of data, you could add an 11th dimension relatively easily. So such open-ended multidimensional databases already exist, so it's really only a matter of taking the knowledge we've gained already from big data and instantiating it in a sufficiently decentralized, distributed, and redundant way. To get an idea of what this would look like from the user's perspective, we could start with what we know, Wikipedia. So although Wikipedia has made more of the world's knowledge available to more people than ever before, it's also severely limited by its legacy architecture and user interface, and I think we all can agree on that. And for all intents and purposes, it's basically just a large hypertext document and nothing more. One of its limits is it only allows for one entry and one entry only for any topic. And you can see the severe limits of this with the math and sciences. For example, if you wanted to learn Einstein's theory of special relativity, one has to rely on that single monolithic page to do it. And a quick glance at that entry will quickly show that unless you are already familiar with other advanced physics terminology and concepts, you may not be able to understand it at all. And what is all too common, especially with these entries on science and math, is that they are written by experts for experts. And when you click on additional hyperlinks that are mentioned on the page, trying to figure out what these other advanced topics are, you end up in a wild goose chase, getting nowhere, and you ultimately don't know anything more about the subject than when you started. To quantify just how ridiculous it is, you can copy and paste text from one of these Wikipedia entries into one of the MIDI reading level engines or sites. So there's these sites where you can take text, cut and paste it, and pop it in. It will actually tell you its reading level. So if you take the Wikipedia entry on relativity, for example, and you post it into one of these literacy level engines, it's at a fourth year college student or grade 16. So unless you're a particularly gifted high school student, Wikipedia's entry on special relativity might as well be written in Greek. So how do we fix this? Simple. We add a dimension for reading level. When you get to the entry on relativity, use the literacy slider to see the many variations of this page, especially written for you at a level that you can understand. So even though there are plenty of books written about topics like relativity for middle school kids, you won't find any of that content on Wikipedia. And that's just a total waste. So imagine the revolution in online learning that could happen if we created a system that was open source with the right structure, the right skeletal structure, scaffolding, that people of all walks of life, teachers and other enthusiasts from around the world could start to, enthusiastically write all of these entries and create all this content for the world's knowledge for all people of all ages and comprehension levels, including increasingly advanced versions for those more gifted and well-informed and determined to master a subject. When one does a query on a particular topic, rather than take you straight to a textual entry, although you could set that up as a default, it takes you to the hub of that particular knowledge. So where you are essentially visually shown using this beautiful graphical interface, all of the options or pathways for learning the topic: text, audio, video, animation, lectures, infographics, you name it. Another dimension is learning style. So although there are some broader classifications of different learning styles that have been ascertained by various educators and educational psychologists, they are ultimately unique to each person. So if you're a visual and or intuitive learner, you would see, in this case, the highest ranked videos, lectures, animations that explain this particular topic for you. For a great example of a teacher who explains very high-level math in a way that lay audiences without that math formalism can understand, I would definitely check out the YouTube channel 3 Blue, 1 Brown. That's 3, the number, the letter blue, the number 1, and the word brown. So 3 blue, 1 brown. So learning style. Learning style can be accessed with a nearly unlimited number of questions that could determine it. That's certainly one way. An entire open source database of questions could be built that people can help determine more precisely how you learn. Can be built by people that can be added to this platform that can help you determine more precisely how you learn over time. As long as the necessary privacy safeguards are in place and with the appropriate instantiation of something like sovereign identity, which uses zero knowledge proofs, a user could access this knowledge at increasingly fine-tuned ways while, retaining their privacy, and there would be no way that anybody could know who they are. So regardless of whether people set up a user profile or not, they could start surfing knowledge right away, playing learning games, taking aptitude tests, interact with other users, find teachers, lessons, classes, courses, entire programs of study, most in alignment with their preferred learning style. So by adding these additional layers or dimensions for literacy, comprehension, and learning style, we've already increased substantially the accessibility and usefulness of human knowledge. Nothing like this exists online currently, not even close. So what if you don't have time to learn a topic? So this is what we call the gist. So it could be like the gist option or the gist button. So you're on a particular stub and you get to this particular topic, like say relativity, and you just hit the gist button, and what you immediately see are gists, which you could define by word length, character length, length of the video, or whatever. And you say, so for example, let's say you're heading into a cocktail party and you only have a few minutes, and you know that there's going to be some physicists there and you don't want to appear like a complete idiot. So you ask, what are the hottest topics in physics are? And say you have 5 minutes, so you look at 3 or 4 of them and you click on the 1-minute gist for each of those topics, and you get the 1-minute download. And of course, it's assumed at this point that it would already know your learning style and everything else. So it would give you a 1-minute download that would just be completely refined to helping you get the most out of that topic in the shortest period of time. So you're immediately shown the best or short, pithy explanations in your preferred learning style for getting you up to speed before the party starts. So, if you look at 4chan, there's 4chan's really an 8chan. These platforms are really good examples of how this sort of evolutionary weaponized autism works. So there's nothing like crowdsourcing that to churn out the very best infographics or explanations of these more advanced topics. There's nothing, you can get these autists competing with each other, and over time you get really amazing explanations. So I'd like to jump now to knowledge organization, categorization, and classification. How do we organize all this knowledge? So over the decades, librarians have worked to create the best categorization systems they can think of for organizing the world's knowledge. We have things like the Dewey Decimal System, which I still like, the Library of Congress system, and in particular, something called the Universal Decimal Classification System. That enables far more fidelity, especially with multidisciplinary topics using something called faceted classifications. So as the world's knowledge gets classified in increasingly better ways and added to this database, it forms the foundation on which increasingly useful and beautiful interfaces could be created to surf that knowledge. I mean, and this is where my mind just goes completely crazy, and I'd love to dive deep on you with that. As long as the knowledge can be classified correctly along with clearly defined metadata, anything is possible. For example, one could surf knowledge taxonomically using a beautiful colored user interface showing all of its nested hierarchies from broader strokes to increasingly fine-tuned criteria as you scour the world's knowledge. Kind of like Google Maps, basically. So as you zoom out, it would allow you to see fields of knowledge in broader strokes, along with its surrounding and related subjects, a sort of bird's eye view, or conversely zooming into a particular subject area and increasing fidelity and detail. This Google map, as it were, would in a sense be a meta interface because one could choose what the X and Y axes represent, or even Z axes if you wanted to make it 3D. For example, if you made the X axis represent time, as in historical dates, and the other the Dewey Decimal System, let's say, with the top of the y-axis representing 000, and the bottom of the y-axis representing 999 in the Dewey Decimal System, you could surf knowledge quite easily based on topic and relevant dates. So you're moving back and forth in time on the left to right axis, moving up and down on subject. So for example, if you move to biology on the y-axis and then move back, let's say 1 million years BC on the x-axis, would probably yield some very interesting results. This presumes that topics in this knowledge database contain the relevant metadata, so date, time, geographical coordinates, pretty much anything, that not only allow you to surf the world's knowledge categorically, but chronologically and geographically as well. So once the metadata is there, it becomes relatively trivial for developers to create something analogous or better than Google Maps for zooming in and out of knowledge through time and space. Just some examples. So like say you wanted to search the subject of philosophy between the years 1830 to let's say 1850, and then you zoom over, say, Central Europe, where a lot of that was going on, where multiple relevant, and so at that point you would zoom in to say Central Europe and multiple relevant entries would show up on the map, along with whatever salient facts or even data sets are relevant to that subject, time, and place. You could zoom in further, say Germany, or even more specifically to the city of Hamburg, and you would see all of the related knowledge on that subject that pertains to philosophy during that period. And of course, since you're on Hamburg, you could rapidly search all knowledge as is related to Hamburg in some way or another. So you would see related knowledge on the subject that pertains to philosophy during that period, with perhaps closely related topics and entries showing up a bit fainter. I'd leave it to the user interface people to determine how that's displayed. And of course, that's the idea, is that multiple people could create multiple user interfaces as part of this open source ecosystem, this knowledge ecosystem. As part of this interface, one could use different layers or filters to increasingly refine your search, with the results changing in real time graphically on the map. Since the foundational knowledge and data layer is already there, the sky really is the limit in terms of how this could be displayed and interacted with graphically. I mean, I could just see it. Creative user interface developers would have a field day. It would be amazing. It'd be like a renaissance. Another fun way of looking at it is another fun way of interacting with this is as a chronology of all knowledge. So you could start by showing you one big timeline that stretches from like 13.7 billion years ago at the Big Bang and all the way to the present moment, even to the future. And you could then zoom in and out such that centuries, years, months, days, even hours show up with any notable events or knowledge pertaining to that particular time and day. If there's If there's a particular historical event with a precise date and time, such as when Abraham Lincoln got shot, it would show up there, as well as the geospatial coordinates of said event. And as you move left or right along the x-axis, you move back and forth in time. The y-axis could represent the Dewey Decimal or Universal Classification System, geographical location. So for example, if there was another event that occurred, let's say 50 miles from Abraham Lincoln the following day, you would see it fairly proximate on the map if that was your metric of your choice. And as you zoom into a particular time on the visual map, you could see increasing granularity and color-coded knowledge, with notable knowledge stubs showing up and increasingly detailed ones as you zoom further in. You could see things like the particular geological period you're in, for example, with increasing number of entries related to that geological era. Or if you zoomed out and went further to the right and zoomed back into the year 161, let's say, you could start seeing entries, even timelines of various persons, places, empires, and so on of that particular year, 161. And if you do that, you might notice a particular color timeline that starts in 121 AD and terminates in 180 AD that represents the life of Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. And if you zoom into that, you'd see further gradations of his reign as emperor, for example, from 161 to 180 when he was reigning, along with multiple entries for any and all notable dates and facts related to his life. And then parallel to that, or proximate to that, you would see other notable Roman figures of the time and region. If you were on the Albert Einstein hub and clicked on the chronology part of that, you would be taken immediately to the proximate location on the chronology map showing his lifetime and notable dates. And next to him, further up and down or proximate, are other physicists overlapping his timeline. You could adjust other slides to determine what defines his proximity, such as topic, date, location, person, place, or thing, or any other relevant metadata that's appropriate. If you were visually surfing the chronology around the time of the Roman Empire, you could, for example, zoom into or refine your search to particular subjects such as math, astronomy, metallurgy. Imagine the kinds of insights metallurgical historians would have as they surf around in time and space for notable metallurgical developments on this chronology map. In summary, the possibilities here are really endless, and that's just the base layer. That's just the knowledge itself and its organization. So we haven't talked about the learning aspect, although we have in a sense. So the education layer, and that's what I call it for lack of a better term. And this is how this database could be used for accelerating learning and education, customizing it. So completely granular and modular education and an accelerating and adaptive education. So since we're talking about Roman history, where does one begin? Like, where would you start with Roman history? It's huge. It seems like it's a daunting subject. But with a simple search using the equivalent of a Educate Me tab, you would immediately see a variety of course offerings, or even better, learning pathways best suited for you, including areas of focus and specialty that guide you through this knowledge database in a progressive fashion, best suited to your learning style, level of interest, aptitude, and so on. These pathways could be carefully crafted by teachers who are masters of the subject, other users who found certain pathways to be particularly powerful, so learn this first and learn that, and here's the next thing you should learn, this concept, this pithy statement, this gist, whatever, this video, this animation, and so on. And then you could have, let's see, so like as you're going through this, you could have fine-tuned assessments, for example, or essentially tests that sort of gauge where you're at with the subject. And then they adjust the learning path for you in real time such that it's optimizing for your mastery of the subject in the shortest period of time. These pathways could be an increasingly coherent mixture of readings and pithy explanations, videos, lectures, so on, presented to you in a logical and progressive way towards mastery. This is where AI can help. By analyzing these large user data sets along with assessing your progress through the material, it could provide an adaptive learning environment where it is offering you up the best explanations or presentations suited to you each step of the way. So lastly, I just want to talk about the AI a little bit. So it obviously, because it would learn a lot about you, it would be, I think, crucial to have robust implementation of zero-knowledge proofs, essential to safeguarding people's privacy, users' privacy. Given how much the system can learn about you, it would be crucial that users retain complete control over their identity and privacy. So although the AI might have a really good idea of how you think and how you learn, it would have no idea about you at all otherwise. It wouldn't know who you are at all. There's so many other applications here. I mean, I could talk to you about this for hours, but besides gaining access to recordings of the best teachers and best material, this would be a perfect platform for you to gain access to the best available tutors, people you can actually work with one-on-one to help you learn whatever subject you're trying to learn. So this has a huge potential for connecting students with the best teachers like never before. So if you're, for example, looking for a tutor who, say you're struggling with math and you need a math teacher that teaches intuitively and visually and has a good sense of humor, this would allow you to find and that tutor very quickly. So when you combine this AI-enabled adaptive learning system with the multidimensional knowledge database structured for people of all ages, education levels, learning styles, you name it, you've completely disrupted the entire legacy education system. I mean, everything would become obsolete. Education, college, all of it. And would be replaced with a much more people-powered, truly public education system that is far superior and more empowering for all involved. So, yeah, I hope you liked it, and please give me a shout if you want to talk further. Thanks, man.